Alright, welcome to the introductory video for the newest version of Gemvision Matrix, Matrix 7.5. So you can see this is our first look at the new version of Matrix. And you will notice that overall the layout and menus of Matrix 7.5 look very similar to that of Matrix 7. And that is true. The biggest thing that has changed with Matrix 7.5 is what is under the hood, so to speak. The new version of Matrix is running on top of the all-new Rhino 5.0. So there are a lot of new features that are hidden within Rhino that we have implemented into Matrix. So as we start off looking through what we see here, as I said, visually the menus will look very similar. The one difference is our Info and Settings tab. You will notice there is a new layer of icons right here. And we're going to take a quick second to talk about what these different items are in this menu. So the first thing that you'll see here on the bottom layer is that we have three icons. And these are three icons for the Rhino Gumball. What is a gumball? Besides a delicious treat, well, a gumball is what Rhino refers to their interactive manipulation system here. You can see once I turn my gumball on by clicking on our icon, when I select an object, I am given a set of viewport control handles. The way the gumball works is it puts all viewport control handles for move, scale, and rotate into one handy manipulator. So you'll see there are movement handles, which I can click and drag on. If anyone has used our MSR controls or the T-spline HUD manipulators, you'll be very familiar with what is happening here with the Rhino Gumball. Right, so you can see, allows for movement. We also have individual little spots right here for scale. As I click and drag on these, this would be a 1D scale. Okay, there'll be one running in the other direction, and then one vertically for scaling within the Z. Now, also, we have rotation handles, which you will see as these three little arcs right here on our gumball. So when I click and drag on these, you will see that it is rotating my object. Right? The same with this direction. And then we also have one for the other angle of rotation. Now some of the other things that you will see here on your HUD. All of these rotation, movement, and scale manipulators are color coded. For example, you'll notice if I'm trying to move something in the Y direction, it shows up as a bright green. 1D scale in the Y direction is bright green, as well as rotation is bright green, all rotating or moving within our Y axis. Why I bring that up is you'll also notice here as I rotate my viewport around, you'll see this little box right here. And half of that box is bright green, the other half is red. What this little button is if I click and drag on it, this is a 2D move. Again, if you've used the T-splines HUD, you notice they always have a little flat disc that you can use for a 2D move. So Rhino has, with their gumball, they have color coded it so you know exactly which two planes that you are moving this in. So if I rotate around here, you'll see now one shows up that's blue and green. And if I keep rotating around, you'll see one that's blue and red. All right, Rhino 5 only displays the one depending on how you move it. Every now and then if you move it just right, you can have two show up. But most of the time you'll see just one of these 2D movement handles. All right, there are some also important kind of keyboard shortcuts to know as we're using the Rhino 5 gumball. The first one is we showed you how I can scale with that particular handle. Okay, so that's just a 1D scale. If I click on this and hold down Shift, this will allow me to do a full 3D scale depending on if I grab Shift. So you can see there it's only a 1D scale. If I click on this and hold down Shift, now it's a 3D scale. And if we're doing a 3D scale, it does not matter which one of these objects we select. Right. One of the other things that has changed with Rhino 5 is that when we are moving an object, previously in Matrix and Rhino, if we held down the Alt key, we would make a copy of the object. However, in Rhino 5, they have changed this up ever so slightly. So with the new version of Matrix, instead of holding down Alt, you simply tap the Alt key once, and once you hit Alt, you'll notice there's that plus sign right there. Okay, so a simple tap of the Alt key versus a full holding down the Alt key is how you get your copied object. Alright, so that is a slight difference in the new version of Matrix and Rhino than you will be used to. So that is an overall look at our gumball. Okay, as we continue on here into our info and settings, we have two additional icons. So the next icon here within our info and settings, they also have to do with the gumball. This one right here, if I click on it, will allow me to relocate the gumball. So it's going to ask for the new origin point. So I could snap right to an end. And then I'm going to give it, in my command line here, it's going to ask me for the X direction. So I can hold down Shift. And then I can hold down Shift again to give it its Y orientation. So now I've set up my gumball to be right there on the end. Why would that particularly matter? Well, if I use scale now from this end, you can see this would scale differently because my point is right here in the center. Alright, as we go back to reset this, there is a little icon right here in the center of our gumball. If I click on that, we will have a reset gumball button as well, and that'll take it back to its default position. Alright, a couple more notes about the overall use of the gumball. I've been working with a solid object right here. However, we can use this with curves, blocks, anything within the program can be used by the gumball. So you can see now if I select a block instance, for example, I have the gumball already on that as soon as I select my object. In addition, I can select multiples of either the same object, different object. Okay, if I select all of these together, the gumball will move all objects together as well. So that's a quick look at the gumball feature of Matrix 7.5. Continuing on here with our info and settings, you'll notice another row of all new icons. So if I click on this icon right here, what this will do down at the bottom is it gives you a tabbed view of your viewports. So you could quickly cycle through the through finger, side view, looking down views by clicking on the tabs. Right? This makes it a little bit quicker as opposed to double clicking on a viewport to come out of the full size, double clicking to go back in. So this tab view allows you to quickly and easily move throughout them. You also notice there's a plus sign that you can click on where you can adjust certain properties of your viewports. You can create a new floating viewport, for example, by simply clicking on this button, and you'll get a copy of the existing viewport that you're working on. Okay, there'll be a little X out there that you can click on to get rid of that. So one of the other new viewport features within Matrix 7.5 is that if I click and drag on the perspective viewport, for example, and this is going to be hard to demonstrate on one single screen, but if I were to drag this off screen, or you can see I'm placing my cursor over my menus, as soon as I do that, it creates a copy of my existing perspective viewport. So I can move this over to my second monitor, for example, if I'm using a 2-monitor setup. Right, so we can X out of that. Right, moving on through our info and settings tab. If I go back to the viewport tabs, I can click on that and that will toggle that option off. Alright, next is our display menu. So if I bring an object out to display here, when I click on the display menu, we get this floating viewport, and this viewport can be docked along the side by moving your cursor. It can be docked or just left floating. So the display menu opens up a quick and editable properties tab for the display mode that I'm using. Currently I'm using the basic shaded mode. So you'll see that listed right here as well. I can go through here and I can choose what is shown or not shown in the particular shade mode that I'm working on. Right? For example, I could uncheck curves. I wouldn't see any of the curves out there on my ring right now. For example, also surface ISO curves, surface edges, and as I go through and do something like that, it starts to look more like a plastic shade mode. So you can quickly and easily do this with any existing shade mode that you are working on. All right, so when I'm all done, if I am wanting to close this out, you'll see this little wrench in the upper right hand corner that if I click on, there is the close button. Alright, so as we continue on our info and settings here, you will see we have a new tab called Box Edit. And this is something new to Rhino 5 Matrix 7.5, and it can be done on any object. I am going to go ahead and create a box just to show you what this is capable of doing. So if I select this, and we'll go over here and turn on Box Edit, and again it's a floating menu that you can dock or have placed anywhere you want. So when I created this box, I didn't really have any set dimensions in mind. But what this allows me to do is, you can see we have a size in the X, Y, and Z. So if I wanted this exactly 8 millimeters in my X, 8 millimeters in my Y, I can type those in, and in my Z, I want it 5 millimeters. I can type those in and hit apply, and now my box, or whatever object I'm working on, has been taking those exact dimensions, as well as scale. For example, if I wanted to scale this in the X direction, I could type 1.5. Maybe I want to scale it up just a little bit, and I can hit apply, and it will scale that exact amount, which can be very handy as opposed to using Scale 1D, the new gumball. It allows you to do nice, easy, exact measurements by using Box Edit. Now, I did this with a box, but this can be done with any type of object. For example, if I create a circle and I select it, you notice I still have my Box Edit window open, so that it goes ahead and gives me the properties of this circle. So again, I could type in exact measurements. So if I've calculated out, or I'm trying to match an exact size, I can type that in there, 0.75 for both the X and Y. Hit apply, and it will change that circle to that exact size. So it allows for easy manipulation after you've created an object. Maybe you didn't make it the exact size you needed to right off the bat. By using the Box Edit feature, you can quickly and easily manipulate existing objects. And again, we have an X button right here to close out. Alright, our next icon as we continue on here is a library menu. And as I open that up, you can see it comes out docked, but again, like anything else, we can move this around if I wanted to. But this gives us a quick, almost like Windows File Explorer, that I can find any folders that I want to. Alright, so you'll see there's a little drop down here. So I can continue navigating through here and choosing the different folders that are on my computer, so I can easily and quickly drag and drop objects into my viewports as I'm using them. Alright, so it is just a little simple file explorer that you can use to drop in elements as you're working. Alright, so I can close that out again. Next we have what is called the selection filter menu. And this is a very neat addition to the new version of Matrix and Rhino. So as I bring out an object or a ring here, for example, you'll notice there's all sorts of types of objects within the program that we can choose. So for example, if I were to uncheck O surfaces and poly surfaces, as an easy example, when I drag my mouse around everything, I will select everything else, but because I have disabled surfaces and poly surfaces in my filter, when I draw my box around it, it will not select those objects. So if I did that, I could select this and hit delete, and I would be left then with just the poly surfaces on my ring. Right? So you can go through and uncheck, and then when you do this, you won't be allowed to select certain objects within the program. So you can see I can't click on anything other than blocks or curves that I happen to have selected. Alright, so I can turn these all back on now, and Matrix will allow me to select everything. Now the really handy way to use this as well is right now I have everything available to be selected. So when I draw a box, everything is picked. However, if I come up to blocks, for example, which block instances are gems within Matrix, if I were to right-click on this object, so I'm going to right-click to uncheck it, when you right-click on one of those checkboxes, it disables everything else but what you right-clicked on. So by right-clicking on blocks, it left only blocks checked, so I could drag a box around it, hit delete, now take this off to my mill, or whatever it is that I'm trying to do. Right? I could bring that back. And if I do this, again, if I have blocks is the only one selected, if I right-click on it, it will again now bring everything back. So some nice things to do as you're modeling. Maybe all your curves are in your way. You're trying to see just what's left of your ring. You could right-click on curves, select all your curves, because that's the only object that's selected right now. So no matter what kind of box I draw, curves will be the only thing I can select, and I could hide those and continue working. Again, so to turn everything back on, you right-click, and that will turn all the objects back on. Right? So the selection filter is a very handy and quick way to work through selecting things within Matrix. So again, I can X out of this to remove that selection filter as well. As we continue on here, that's the selection filter that we were just using. And then we have Smart Track. So if anybody has ever used Smart Track in the past, we give you a simple toggle on and off for Smart Track. So if I start working here with Smart Track on, when I go to, for example, draw, you can see it's giving me my ortho lines. If I were to turn on some different O snaps, it will start to give me these different grid lines and Smart Track options available. All right, so this is just a simple toggle on and off for Smart Track now within Matrix. All right, so that's a look at the Info and Settings tab. A few more other features that have been added into the new Matrix 7.5. Just to show you, there are a couple of new shade modes available. If I click on my drop down, you will see that there are some new ones called Technical, Artistic, and Pen. So if I choose Technical, it gives us a very kind of typical shaded, but with very heavy, thick drawn lines. We also have one called Artistic. This will take a quick extra second to draw out there. So it's just another new shade mode. And this is a good example here that when I'm working with this, you can still see my curves. So if I wanted to, I could come over here to my display menu and say I want to turn off curves for this particular shade mode, so all I'm left with is that very hand-drawn look. Close this out, and then lastly we have one called Pen. It's very similar, but again, shows curves that you could disable at any time within the display menu. Alright, so this has been a quick look at an overview of some of the new features display-wise that you will typically see within the new version of Matrix 7.5. You'll also find some new commands interspersed throughout the menus, but I wanted to give a general overview here of what you're seeing new and some of the new major additions to Matrix.